The lecture we're looking at this afternoon, which is Activity is Life. Activity is the very law of life. As in the natural and in the spiritual world, any power unused will weaken and decay. Activity is the law of life and idleness is death. Stagnant pools breed disease and stagnant bodies breed disease. But there is a form of exercise that can get the body up onto a better and more efficient rate of running than any other exercise. And the good news is too, it's the briefest exercise. And isn't that why many people don't exercise? They don't have time. Well, once you realise what this small amount of exercise will do to you, you will realise you can't afford not to do this. And what I'm referring to in this form of exercise is interval training. Have you heard of interval training? This interval training is called high intensity interval training. So high intensity, often given the nickname HIIT. And as the name implies, this form of exercise are intervals of high intensity. So the high intensity, what would high intensity be? High intensity can be running for your life. Can't run? Swimming. Can't swim? Push-ups. Can't push up? Exercise bike. I think everyone can do exercise bike. You're holding on, so if you're a little unstable on your feet, you can do it. Nah, it hurts my hip or hurts my knee, someone might say. Well, there's another form of exercise called rebounding. Have you heard of rebounding? It's on the little mini trampoline. And a good rebounder will cost you $500. Haven't got $500? Get the name of a good one, go to eBay, Gumtree, have a look, and I'm sure you'll find one. A lot of people I talk to find them in second-hand shops. People don't realise what they've got. And it's in the way, so they sell it. And that's good news for you if you're looking for one. So anything that get the body moving and moving fast and get the heart rate up and the breathing increased. Now, most of the time, the high intensity can be 20 to 30 seconds. Now, that's not long, is it? When I first started to do this, I thought, 30 seconds will be easy, and I'm running up hills. When I get to 20 seconds, my body says, enough. When I get to 25 seconds, my body says, this is ridiculous. When I get to 30 seconds, I almost feel like I'm dying. 30 seconds is a very long time when you're doing high intensity. And then a recovery time. And the recovery time could be anywhere between 60, 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. So 60 to 90 seconds, recovery. So what's recovery? Well, if you're very fit, recovery might be just cycling downhill. If you're very fit, recovery could be walking downhill. If you're not very fit, it might be leaning against a pole and just getting your breath or just holding your legs. Recovery can be whatever suits you. How long should recovery take? Recovery takes as long as it takes before you could consider running for your life again, or cycling again, or rebounding again. Your fitness is not dependent on how hard and fast you can go, but how long you take to recover. And then this is done for a cycle. It's done for a cycle usually of 6. Do the maths on that. It's not long, is it? Was that 15 minutes? Put up your hand if you haven't got 15 minutes in your 24 hours. None of us would dare, would we? Because 15 minutes is nothing. If you don't think you've got 15 minutes, do an assessment on what you do with your time every day. You got 15 minutes. Now, what I'm going to do now is we're going to go into a little bit of science now. But I'm talking about you, and understanding this explains why it is such a powerful form of exercise. We're going to go to the CBD. You've heard of the CBD? Central Business District of the human body is the inside workings of the cell. Let's go inside the cell. Here's the cell. The glucose goes in. In fact, it's happening right now as we speak after our lunch. You see, in our gastrointestinal tract, food is broken down to tiny little particles called glucose, and then it comes in through the gut wall. And in my next lecture, I'm going to show you in detail how this happens. Then it goes into the blood. Then it goes on the blood to the project manager, the liver. And then the liver determines where that glucose goes. And number one, the liver sends the glucose to the cell. And then it comes into the cell under the action of insulin. I think most people realise that insulin's the key that unlocks the door to get the glucose into the cell. Then it goes through a 20-step pathway. These are 20 little chemical reactions, and that gives us 2 units of the big E, energy. Isn't that why we eat? Now, this process that I'm showing you of what happens to the glucose once it gets into the cell, that's in your liver cell, that's in your eye cells, that's in your muscle cells, that's in your brain cells. That's actually how every part of your body works. The end result of the 20-step pathway is a chemical form of glucose called pyruvate. And pyruvate is the chemical form of glucose that gets fed into what's often called the powerhouse, because this little 8-step pathway gives us a whopping 36 units of energy. How come? How come a 20-step pathway only gives us 2 and an 8-step pathway gives us 36? It's oxygen. So this is an aerobic pathway. And this pathway here is an anaerobic pathway. You know, it's often been said we should do aerobic exercise. You can't get to aerobic exercise unless you go through anaerobic exercise first. So that's what happens to the glucose when it gets into the blood. It goes through these little energy cycles to give us energy. But there's still a lot of glucose left over from the meal that we eat. And so now the liver causes it to be stored, and this, especially in the muscle cell, and it just looks like little bunches of grapes, but they're little molecules of glucose, and they're called glycogen. So that's the second place that the liver will send the excess glucose from the meal we've eaten, and we can't use it all. Now, this is why the best time to exercise is early in the morning, and you might say, but where am I going to get the energy from? I haven't eaten anything. Your glycogen stores. As soon as your body starts needing more fuel, it plucks those little molecules of glucose and threads them through the pathway. Pluck, thread, pluck, thread. It's an amazing process. No wonder the psalmist says, I will praise you for I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvellous are thy works. And when you go to the inside workings of the cell, it's even more amazing. And the psalmist didn't know what I'm showing you this afternoon. So what happens when we run out of glycogen stores? Because only so much can be stored. Well, then there's another fuel supply in the body, the most amazing fuel supply. It's called fat. You've heard of it? Fat cells. And unfortunately, in Australia today, on the high carbohydrate diet, producing too much glucose, Aussies are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, what I want to show you, now that we've established, and I'll just put this the third place that the glucose is sent, and by the way, only leftovers are sent there. I want to show you what this high-intensity exercise does at the cellular level. So let's say you're getting into near the end of your first set of 30 seconds high intensity. 20-step pathway speeds up. 8-step pathway speeds up. Well, that's not surprising, is it? But this 20-step pathway is very fast. This 8-step pathway is quite slow. Now, as you're sitting here right now, the revs of this faster pathway and the slow pathway, they actually fit into one another quite well. But when you start to speed them both up, more pyruvate is being made than can be fed into the 8-step pathway. Because there's a rate-setting enzyme there that will always keep this one slower and this one faster. And so more pyruvate is being made. And so now the liver causes it to be stored in the cell as lactic acid. You've heard of lactic acid? So the lactic acid is building up. I think the most exciting part of this presentation is what I'm about to tell you. When you're in recovery time, and remember, recovery time can be slow cycling, or the little health bounce on the rebounder, or walking downhill, or just sitting, or standing, getting your breath back. When you're in recovery time, your liver converts that lactic acid back to pyruvate and feeds it into the powerhouse. Do you know what that means? When you're in recovery time, sometimes doing nothing, your cell is burning just as much fuel as when you're running for your life. Isn't that good news? Now, the athletes know this, or they should know this, because they use that lactic acid as a backup fuel supply. And that's how God designed the body to run. And that is why the research is showing today, it was first used in about the 30s by a German trainer, and he found his athletes had an edge when he trained them in interval training. But then much was lost in the war. The next time it was documented was a Japanese trainer called Tabata. And Tabata would put his Olympian figure skating girls through interval training. And he got them to do 20 seconds high intensity, 60-second recovery time for a cycle of 6. And he found when it came time for the event, his girls had an edge. In many gyms today, you can do the Tabata protocol. You have different activities. You might have 6 different activities in the gym. It's the interval training. And you will find most trainers put their trainers, no matter what they're training for, through interval training, because they have an edge. And you can see why the lactic acid is mopped up. In recovery time, this is what happens, and in recovery time, every cell recovers and it's ready to do its high intensity again. But let's continue to see what happens as we go through this. So by the second or third set of high intensity, the glycogen stores are all being used up. So now the brain says, we're running out of fuel. So it stimulates a release from the pituitary gland of the human growth hormone. The human growth hormone is often called youth hormone. In fact, many movie stars pay $1,000 a week to take the human growth hormone because it has an effect to make one youthful. So let's go back to, we're running out of fuel, our glycogen stores have been used up. So now the brain causes a release of human growth hormone. The human growth hormone activates hormone-sensitive lipase. Hormone-sensitive lipase is an enzyme that breaks up fat stores. And because we're running out of fuel, hormone-sensitive lipase now breaks up our fat supplies to make available fuel. We're running out of fuel, remember? The body now stops burning glucose as fuel and becomes a fat burner. And let me tell you why for that. You see, glucose burns at 4 calories per gram, whereas fat, it burns at 9 calories per gram. And many people trying to lose weight look at that and think, I should stop the fat. But they don't understand what a calorie is. A calorie is a unit of energy. So if you want a high energy food, what do you eat? Fat. That's why coconut cream is a great additive to every smoothie. You can see why the body now is burning fat as fuel, because it's going to give more than twice the units of energy that glucose will give. But there's more. The human growth hormone increases the body's ability to utilise protein. And protein probably one of the most important nutrients in our body. 50% of the membrane around every cell is protein. The building blocks of the new cells, protein. So when a person does this interval training, running out of their glycogen store, human growth hormones release, which activates not only the fat stores, starts burning fat as fuel, but also increases our body's ability to utilise protein. There's more. The human growth hormone increases the circulation of the blood to the skin. So it slows down ageing. That's why the movie stars pay $1,000 a week for this. But I'm offering it to you cut price today. 15 minutes, interval training a day will cause a release of that human growth hormone, and it will remain active for 24 hours. What a bargain. You see, muscle knows no age. Whether you're 9 or 90, this is applicable. And we are training for something more important than the Olympic Games. We're training for life. We're training for the latter years of life. Going to an aged care facility, especially where a lot of the aged care people have lost their functions of their mind and their body, and you are going to be there if you live the way they live. Do you realise that? So we're going to take control of our health right now. We're going to go into training so that we can enjoy the latter years of our life. And remember, muscle knows no age. So it doesn't matter what age you are, this is absolutely imperative that it be part of your life because of the results that it's going to be giving you. Increasing the circulation of the blood to the skin means it slows down ageing. Now, our body will deteriorate, but the lectures that I'm giving show you how you can slow down that deterioration, but the brain need never deteriorate. Dr. Neil Nedley, in his book Depression: A Way Out, he says in there, if he comes across a very depressed, bipolar person, he puts them on 7 hours of exercise a day. Now, after 1 week, they are so improved because that exercise is increasing the circulation of the blood to the brain. We've got 1 trillion brain cells. If every single brain cell has enough oxygen to get down to there, what's the sort of energy that's going to be coming out of your brain? Now, that's going to affect the way you think. That's going to affect your emotions. It's going to affect you spiritually. It's going to affect you mentally. Dr. Neil Nedley says after 7 days of 7 hours of exercise a day, they can come back to a maintenance dose of 1 hour a day exercise or 15 minutes interval training, high intensity interval training. Cheap medicine. In my lecture this morning, I talked about the 2 parts of the brain, the part of the brain where our feelings are at the back and the part of our brain where we make our decisions. And one lady who was depressed said, "But Barbara, I don't feel like exercising." I said, "Well, don't take any notice of that." Now, sometimes you might have to go like this. Just do it. Just do it. What's your incentive? What I also talked about is the part of your brain where you make your decision, there's foresight. You're going to feel good. And you're going to feel good because of the amount of oxygen that you're putting into your body. You see, oxygen is the most important element needed for life. Now, good air, I don't know about air on the street out there, but good air will be 21% oxygen. It'll be 79% nitrogen and a very small percentage of carbon dioxide. So right now, as you sit here, you're breathing in 500 ml of air, you're breathing out 500 ml of air. When you do your high intensity and you're breathing incredibly deeply, you're breathing in 3,600 ml of air and you're breathing out 3,600 ml of gaseous waste. So exercise is the most powerful way to oxygenate your body. So there's a few things there, and that is be mindful of where you're exercising. If you live in the city, you've got to find the streets with all the trees on them, because you know the trees are giving off pure air. So when I exercised this morning, I did a little bit of a scout around yesterday afternoon to find out where the closest park was and where most of the trees are, so that I could, and I found the hills so I could do my high intensity running up and recovery coming down, because I knew that my ability to deliver to you today was a lot dependent on my exercise early in the morning. Some people say, look, I'm too busy to exercise. Do you know, you can't afford not to. So the busier I get, the more that I do it. So that explains why the high intensity interval training is the most powerful form of exercise, because of the effect that it has at the cellular level. I want to take a moment now to talk about rebounding. Rebounding is like on a little mini trampoline. And your recovery on rebounding can be just the health bounce. This is called the health bounce. Now, everyone can do the health bounce. That's all it is jigging up and down like this. Now, as you get good at it, you can start to actually bounce. And your bouncing can be your high intensity. And with your bouncing, you can twist like this. Your feet can go either side of the mat. If you want to get really high intensity, start jogging on the rebounder. That's really high intensity. So why the rebounder? Well, with rebounding, there is no jarring. If you talk to people in their 50s, 60s who were joggers or runners in their 20s, 30s, and you will find they've got lower back problems, they've got knee problems, they've got ankle problems, because every step is a jar. It's jarring. And one thing that joggers have always done, but the thought is changing now, is they run on their heels. Now, if you take your shoes off and run on grass, you will never strike with your heel. Your body won't let you. But some well-known jogger brands, they build up the heel, yeah, to encourage heel striking. And that's where the hamstring, the Achilles, the lower back, the pelvic, the hip, the knee, that's where it comes from, because God designed the toe with shock absorbers almost. And so you will bounce. And when you bounce on your toes, your arch strengthens. So, but when you strike with your heel, it does not strengthen your arch, and it also is jarring to your joints and your lower back. So if you are a runner, always toe strike. There is a book called Born to Run by Christopher McDougall. I don't know whether you've heard of it, but this book actually caused a bit of a revolution when it was written maybe about 8 years ago. And this guy was a runner, and he used to get hamstring and lower back problems all the time. So he took a year off work and decided to travel the world interviewing runners. And as he began to search out runners, he found some runners who were barefoot runners. And he also discovered that in the Olympic Games, 1960, 1964, an African runner named Abibi Bikila. Have you heard of Abibi Bikila? He won gold, he broke records, barefoot runner. Now, Nike and Reebok don't like that story, yeah? He's a barefoot runner, and he discovered in his journey a few other barefoot runners. They don't have the back problems, they don't have the knee and the hip problems. So when I read this book, I was enthused. So I went to find thin-soled runners. So when I buy runners today, I want a runner that in the shop I can bend the toe and the heel to touch each other, thin-soled. In fact, since the book, you can even buy joggers with toes in them. You've seen those? I said to one lady, how do you put a sock on? She said, it's all right, they even make socks with toes to fit in there. So I got my thin-soled runners, and I started to do my interval training running up hills. And the next day, my muscles were so sore in my legs. In fact, for a whole week, I had sore muscles. Now, that told me that when you toe strike compared to heel striking, you're using totally different muscles. You watch how children run. How do children run? Always toes. They're always running on their toes. You will see that. And that's the way God designed the body. Now, in the book, Born to Run, the author is an evolutionist, so he keeps talking about this foot evolving, and then at one point he says it's actually quite an amazing design. And I thought, make up your mind. Is it design or is it an evolution? But personally, I feel that evolution doesn't make much sense. But a perfect design from a creator God certainly makes a lot of sense. So if you are a runner, go for your toe striking and start to buy those thin-soled shoes. Now I thought, well, I won't have to pay hundreds of dollars for my joggers anymore. But guess what? They've got onto this and you still pay a lot of money for your thin-soled joggers. But rebounding, everyone can rebound. And the beauty of rebounding is there is no jarring at all. Now, there is a trampolinist. He was a trampolinist back in about the 70s, 80s. His name's Albert Carter. And he is very fit, very muscly. Well, he's in his 70s now, but fit pictures of him when he was in his 20s, 30s, 40s. Very, very fit. You know, you can count his abs, the muscles there. He doesn't do any push-ups. All he does is trampolining, an incredibly muscular, fit body. Anyway, he married and had children, and he and his 2 children and his wife used to do a trampolining show, so they'd travel with their trampolining show. And as time went on, he noticed his little 4-year-old daughter, she liked people to hold up her legs and she'd do 1-arm push-ups. And his little 7-year-old son would do 1,000 push-ups and no kid could come anywhere near him. And Albert scratched his head. I mean, he didn't really notice maybe that he was incredibly fit too, but all they did was trampolining. So he began to have a look at what trampolining does. And as he went into his journey of discovery, he also discovered that NASA put their astronauts on rebounding trampolining. You see, strength comes by defying gravity. And the best defying gravity exercise there is the trampolining or the rebounding. Because defying gravity is going up where gravity wants you to go down. So it's defying gravity that increases the G-force in the body. And this is why NASA trained their athletes in trampolining. Because when you're in outer space, there is no gravity. You can't defy gravity. And the astronauts would commonly come back with their bones and their muscles deteriorating. These are strong young men because nothing in space was defying gravity. But also what the trampolining did was it prepared their bodies by increasing the G-force in the body. So increasing the G-force, of course, is defying gravity. But what Albert Carter found is that in rebounding or trampolining, you've got 3 laws or 3 teachers or 3 forces coming together. Let me list these 3 forces. One force is, of course, your defying gravity. The other force is acceleration. Acceleration. And the other force is deceleration. These are the 3 teachers. So let us consider this. You're defying gravity when you jump, but when you jump, you've got acceleration, and just before you come to the peak where you stop, you've got deceleration. As you're coming down, you've got acceleration, and just before you touch the mat, you've got deceleration. So these 3 forces are coming together to have an incredibly dramatic effect on the body. There is no exercise that will exercise every single cell in the body. Your eyesight improves, your hearing improves, your brain function improves, because every single cell in the body, when you jump, the body, every cell is affected. And then when you get to the peak, every single cell in your body is affected by the weightlessness, and then you come down and you hit the bounce, and at the bounce, every cell in the body is tightening again. We have a second heart. You've got a pump that pumps the blood, but we have got a second heart that pumps the blood back to the heart, and that is the calf muscles. No other exercise gives the calf muscles a workout like your rebounding, because it is your calf muscles that, of course, bounce you back up again. So we have a pump that pumps the blood, the circulatory system, through the whole body. And you know, perfect health requires perfect circulation. And perfect circulation means that my toes and my fingertips are as warm as the rest of my body. Because the Bible says the life of the flesh is in the blood. And it is the blood that is moved in a dramatic way with exercise, and particularly we're talking about rebinding. But there is another network of capillaries called the lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system doesn't have a pump. The only thing that moves the lymphatic system is movement. But there is no other exercise that'll stimulate the lymphatic system like rebounding. You see, the lymphatic system is a network of little tiny capillaries that's totally different to the blood capillaries. Did you know that your blood capillaries have muscles around them? And you've got this pushing along of the blood, but not the lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system is unique in a few ways. It has little gates all the way along. And the only thing that opens those gates is movement. So what is the lymphatic system? The lymphatic system is your body's vacuum cleaner. So the lymphatic system sucks away waste from the tissues, sucks away excess fluid from the tissues. Let me tell you what's happening when you rebound. When you hit the mat, all the gates are closed. When you're up in the air at that split-second weightlessness, every gate is open in the whole of the body, every gate. And then you come down and hit the mat and all the gates close. And then you go up again and all the gates open. In fact, 3 minutes of rebounding stimulates that lymphatic system 60% more than if you were just walking. It's the most powerful way to do it. And so looking at the closed gates, the open gates, the closed gates, you got this pumping action. And it's pumping away waste from the tissues, it's pumping away excess fluid from the tissues. So it is the best thing for edema, best thing for edema of the legs and also pulmonary edema. How many people do you know that have edema? Well, all you need to do is 3 minutes, 3 times a day, rebounding. Now, if you want to implement this, you can do your 3 lots of 3 minutes all at once. So it depends on what you can do. As I said, a good one will cost you $500. Best to get a good one because you'll be able to bounce more effectively and it will last you. Rain, hail or shine, you can just do it in your lounge room. Some people that live in Sydney say, Barbara, I don't walk, it's too dangerous on the streets. Well, there's no excuse now, you're a rebounder. You got a birthday coming up, ask for your rebounder. Just had a birthday, oops, too late. Find out a good brand, go to Gumtree or what's the other one, eBay, and find your rebounder there. And if the children, your grandchildren or your children visit, where will they be? On the rebounder. You want to keep kids happy, what do you put in the backyard? A trampoline. What are the old sayings? When someone's happy, they jump for joy. What's the first thing babies do? Start pushing themselves up, defying gravity. Then they start crawl, then they start walking. It's defying gravity that gives strength. And let's go back to Albert Carter. Why were his children so strong? It's because of what that trampolining or rebounding does. If a lady has just had a baby and she gets on the rebounder, she will basically wet herself because her urethral muscles are a little weakened from the birth because of the pressure. The fact that when she gets on a rebounder, she will feel to urinate, that tells you exactly that that muscle is going to be strengthened by rebounding. So remember, we are constantly defying gravity, and rebounding is the most effective and most efficient form of exercise to strengthen every single cell in your body. So when your family and friends start to see the muscles starting to bulge out of your clothes, they're going to say, "What gym are you working out at?" And they will be surprised to know that all you are doing is a few minutes on the rebounder. Again, if you can't do much, you just start with this. And then as you can, you go further and you jump higher and higher and higher. Remember, muscle knows no age. And this is the most efficient and effective form of exercise that there is. And yet it's so simple. You'd almost bypass it. Albert Carter gives another experiment that they did. They had 16 athletes, very, very fit, young men, all in their 30s, and they used to do gym circuits. You know, they do weights and then they do push-ups and then cycling. So they had a circuit of different moves they would do. With one group, Albert Carter got them to do 30 seconds rebounding between every circuit. The other group, they didn't do the rebounding. 3 months later, the group that did the rebounding between every set of circuit or every activity, 25% more strength. Now, these were already fit and strong young men. In fact, it is so simple and it is so easy that it's often bypassed. Many homes have rebounders that are gathering dust in the garage. Is that right? One lady rang me. She had a very bad ulcer on her leg. She'd already been through the operation and it was bad again, and they're talking about more operations. I said, no. She's a pensioner, and I said, well, what you really need to do is rebound, because she's on a walking frame, and you know, with a lot of rebounders you can get a frame so you can hold on and do it there. She said, I've got one. So this lady in her back shed or garage was the very thing that would heal her. And how much cheaper is that than operation after operation? I said, well, blow the dust off and get the rebounder out. To exercise, I find you have to make an appointment with yourself. That's what I do. If you don't make an appointment with yourself, basically the day goes and you've hardly even got to your exercise. The best time to do it is in the morning, because you will reap the benefits all day long by doing it in the morning. I had a guy do our program and he said to me, I've just spent 3 months in hospital. I said, what happened? He said, I broke my leg, the tibia and the fibula. I said, what happened? He said, well, they put a pin and plate in, but it didn't set right, so they had to take it away and do it again. He said, 3 months I was in hospital. I said, oh. He said, and I left that hospital the fittest I'd ever been. I said, you're in the hospital bed for 3 months and you came out fit? He said, yeah, I got my mates to come in and build a gym around my bed. Sorry, there's no excuse here. There's no excuse. You've just got to get onto that. You better get on there quickly, because there'll be a few people on Gumtree tonight. Is that right? Looking for their rebounders. As I said, get a good brand. Don't go to the sports store and buy the $69 job, okay? Because that is not going to last, and it's not going to give you a proper spring. Strength comes by exercise. There is no other way. So the illustration that I gave you shows you that oxygen, the most vital element needed for life, is what you get when you exercise. That's other than the strength that you get by use. Oxygen is the most vital element needed for life. Cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. That one fact alone inspires people to do it. I have drawn this as if there's one of those energy cycles per cell, but not so. In fact, in a muscle cell, you can have hundreds of these little energy cycles. And if a person doesn't exercise and they start exercising, because the body needs more oxygen, the body can actually develop more of those little energy cycles. For the technical amongst us, this is the glycolytic pathway, this is the Krebs cycle inside the mitochondria. No wonder the saying says, you will receive more oxygen than you expend on your exercise. You just got to find out where to put it in. Morning's best because you will reap the benefits all day long. And as one old book said, in a short time you will so experience the benefits of pure air and exercise you would not live without these blessings. Now, just to finish it off, when you've finished your exercise program, hopefully you'll be hot, you'll be perspiring. That's when you have your hot shower, and in the last 10 seconds, you know what you do, don't you? Turn the hot off. You'll go like this. Don't worry about it. You see, we are warm-blooded creatures, and of course we don't like cold. But cold has an incredible tonic effect, and that quick cold will stimulate rapid healing, because when you start exercising, you may get some sore muscles from little muscle cells tearing to build up to stronger muscles, and that quick cold has a tonic effect. It has a tonic effect because we are warm-blooded creatures. And so when cold water touches us, the body goes, danger! You get this reaction effect. One young man said to me, I've just found out something better than coffee to give me a boost in the morning. I said, what's that? He said, a quick cold after my hot shower. And it is true. Remember, you won't like it, but you'll get over it. It's quick. One lady said to me, Barbara, you said we've got to listen to our bodies, and my body says don't have cold after the hot. Well, remember in my lecture this morning, the two part of the brain, the feeling part, I don't feel like it. The front part that says this is good and it's brief, you'll be right. But when you've finished, then note how you feel. The body has this amazing reaction. So every morning I do interval training, and every morning I dive into the mountain creek after the interval training. And the last time I've dived in the creek was a week ago, because I've been in Tasmania for a few days, and there was ice under my feet as I was walking towards the creek. And my feeling part says, you're mad. Frontal lobe says, no, this is good. And at every stage I assess. Do you know, the hardest part is the thought. I'm so used to it now I don't even think about it. But at the moment, I'm in the creek about 7 seconds. I've worked out that if I can get in and out very quickly, deep pain doesn't kick in. And you're not cold. It's just the reaction on the skin. But that quick reaction goes way down to your bone marrow and stimulates the release of more red blood cells, more white blood cells, has an incredible tonic effect. So when you have breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and tea like a pauper, and go to bed early because you've switched off all your technology and have all the technology recharging in the next room, and you sleep with a nice woolly blanket on and your doona on and have your window open with fresh air, then you will wake early in the morning, and that's the time that God speaks to us. And you have a big drink of water, and then you can put your clothes on and you can go for your early morning run or your early morning rebounding, then have your hot and cold shower, and then sit down to a nourishing meal, a plant-based diet. In my next lecture where I talk about the gut, I'll show you the best food, and then you are ready for the day. And I challenge you to see if you're not better prepared physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally for everything that will come your way that day. And they come, don't they? I maintain in a well-slept, well nourished, well exercised, well hydrated body, that body copes with stress. So I trust you've been inspired to take up exercise. I do it every day because I never want to miss it, because of what it gives you. Try it, and the Bible says in 1 Thessalonians 5:21, prove all things and hold fast to that which is good. I have proven that this works, that you feel so good on it, that I hold fast to it. It's Old English, it means just do it.